The whispering woods. The aroma of burnt coffee hung in the air, a familiar comfort in Tom's small kitchen. Buster, a scruffy terrier mix, thumped his tail against the linoleum, his brown eyes fixed on Tom as he poured the lukewarm brew. "All right, boy, patience," Tom mumbled, more to himself than the dog. Their mornings were a ritual: coffee for Tom, a handful of kibble for Buster, and then the woods. Every day they walked the familiar trail, a well-worn path that traced the edge of Oak Haven's whispering woods. It was a calming routine, a buffer between Tom's quiet life and the world beyond. Tom worked remotely as a software developer, a solitary job that suited his temperament. Buster, on the other hand, thrived on the scents and sounds of the forest, a furry ball of boundless energy. This morning, however, something felt different. A subtle shift in the air, perhaps, or the way the sunlight filtered through the trees. As they reached their usual turning point, Tom noticed a narrow, overgrown path he'd never seen before. It was barely visible, choked with ferns and fallen branches. Curiosity, a rare visitor, nudged at him. "What do you think, Buster?" he asked, knowing full well the dog wouldn't offer any profound insights. Buster, predictably, strained at his leash, his nose twitching, clearly intrigued by the new smells emanating from the hidden trail. Tom hesitated. Deviating from their routine was unsettling. But the path beckoned, a silent invitation to explore the unknown. "All right," he conceded, unclipping Buster's leash. "But stay close." The trail was rough and uneven, forcing Tom to watch his step. The air grew cooler, the trees denser, their branches interwoven like skeletal fingers. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the canopy, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. Buster, usually a whirlwind of activity, trotted quietly beside him, his senses heightened. A sense of unease began to creep into Tom's mind. The whispering wind, which usually soothed him, now seemed to carry hushed secrets, unintelligible whispers that tickled the back of his neck. He pushed the feeling aside, attributing it to his overactive imagination. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the trail opened into a small, hidden clearing. Sunlight streamed through a gap in the trees, illuminating a circle of wildflowers in vibrant hues of purple and gold. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient oak, its gnarled branches reaching towards the sky like supplicating arms. The air here was still and heavy, charged with an almost palpable energy. Tom stopped, mesmerized. He'd lived in Oak Haven his entire life and had never known this place existed. It was a sanctuary, a secret haven hidden deep within the woods. Buster, equally captivated, sat at his feet, panting softly. As Tom gazed around the clearing, taking in its ethereal beauty, he noticed something else. A flicker of movement near the base of the ancient oak. A splash of color against the muted greens and browns of the forest floor. He squinted, his heart beginning to pound in his chest. It looked like a person. A cry for help. The clearing was small, barely bigger than Tom's living room, but the scene within it made his breath catch in his throat. Sarah was kneeling, cradling a child Tom guessed was about 8. The boy's face was screwed up in pain, tears streaking through the dirt on his cheeks. Buster whimpered, nudging Tom's leg with his wet nose. "Hello?" Tom called out, his voice hesitant. He stepped into the clearing, Buster padding close behind. Sarah looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and wide. "Please," she croaked, her voice hoarse. "Please, can you help us?" Tom knelt beside them, his calloused hands hovering uncertainly. "What happened?" "He fell," Sarah said, gesturing to the boy. "Tripped over a root. I think he's twisted his ankle badly." The boy, Leo, sniffled, burying his face in his mother's shoulder. Tom noticed the unnatural angle of Leo's left foot. It was already starting to swell. "It hurts, Mommy," Leo mumbled. "I know, sweetheart, I know," Sarah murmured, stroking his hair. "This kind man is going to help us." Tom gently touched Leo's arm. "Hey there, champ. What's your name?" Leo peeked out from behind his mother's shoulder, his eyes filled with apprehension. "Leo," he whispered. "Hi, Leo. I'm Tom, and this is Buster." Buster, sensing the tension, wagged his tail tentatively. "Looks like you've got a bit of a boo-boo there. We need to get you back to the trailhead." Sarah's shoulders slumped with relief. "The trailhead? We're lost. We've been wandering for hours. I thought we were following the trail," but her voice trailed off, choked with emotion. "Lost? How did you get lost?" Tom asked, trying to keep the concern from his voice. He noticed the expensive hiking boots Sarah wore, scuffed and mud-splattered. They looked brand new. I don't know. We took a wrong turn somewhere." She looked around the clearing, a flicker of panic in her eyes. "My phone's dead. I haven't seen another person all day." Tom stood up, assessing the situation. Leo was too heavy to carry any significant distance with a bad ankle. "Okay, first things first. We need to splint that ankle." Do you have anything in your pack? Sarah rummaged through her backpack, pulling out a water bottle, a half-eaten granola bar, and a small first aid kit. Tom took the kit and quickly found an elastic bandage and some gauze. This will help stabilize it, he explained, carefully wrapping Leo's ankle. Leo winced but didn't cry out. Now, the bad news. It's going to be slow going getting back. Can you walk at all, Leo? Leo shook his head, tears welling up again. No. It hurts too much. Tom sighed. All right. I'll carry him as far as I can, but we'll need to take breaks. He looked at Sarah. Are you up to it? It's not an easy walk, even without an injury. Sarah nodded, her jaw set. I'll do whatever it takes. Tom smiled reassuringly. Okay, let's get moving. He carefully scooped Leo up in his arms, the boy surprisingly light. Hold on tight, buddy. Buster, heel. As they started to make their way back through the woods, the setting sun casting long, eerie shadows, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Lost hikers were common enough, but the desperation in Sarah's eyes, the expensive gear. Welcome home. Tom knelt, concern etching lines into his forehead as he examined Leo. Let's get you patched up, sport. With a practiced gentleness, he lifted the boy, carefully supporting the injured ankle. A small sound of pain escaped Leo, but he clung tightly to Tom, seeking refuge in the curve of his neck. Sarah trailed them, relief warring with lingering apprehension on her face. The crunch of stones marked their progress to Tom's pickup. He eased Leo onto the worn passenger seat, nestling a folded blanket around the swelling. Sarah slid into the back, her gaze fixed on the boy. The cab held the comforting scent of pine cleaner and aged leather. Are we there yet? Do you have any pets? What about games? Leo's questions tumbled out. Tom chuckled, catching Sarah's reflection in the rearview mirror. Hold your horses, buddy. Yes, we're heading to my place. Nope, no pets. And I've got one ancient relic of a video game. His house was unpretentious, a simple cabin with a welcoming porch swing. Inside, he settled Leo onto a faded floral couch. Stay put, okay? His voice was soothing, yet firm. Moments later, he returned bearing a first aid kit, a basin of tepid water, and a soft towel. This might sting a little, he cautioned, dabbing at the abrasion surrounding Leo's throbbing ankle. The boy squeezed his eyes tightly shut, but remained stoic. Anxiousness etched deep lines around Sarah's eyes, her hands knotted in her lap. Thank you, she murmured, her voice thick with gratitude as Tom secured the bandage. I truly don't know what we would have done. Tom dismissed her thanks with a shrug as he taped the end of the bandage. It was nothing, really. Just glad I happened by. He tossed the spent cotton balls away. So, he began, turning his attention back to Sarah. Care to tell me what brings you out this far? And why you're so far off the beaten path? Sarah hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an exit. It's a bit of a story, she confessed, her voice barely audible. We're a long way from anywhere familiar. She swept a hand through her disheveled hair. Remarkably far. Leo, briefly forgetting his discomfort, chimed in. We came from way over there. He clapped, then grimaced, clutching his ankle once more. Tom's brow arched, his gaze sharp with unspoken questions. He couldn't quite place them, but the fear that radiated from Sarah was undeniable. Well, he said gently, you're safe here, and you can share whatever you feel comfortable sharing. But right now, how about I rustle up some supper for us all? Becoming a family. The rhythm of the days shifted, the house settling into a new harmony. Leo, a miniature tornado of energy, shadowed Tom whenever possible. Can I help, Tom? Can I? Please, he'd plead, his small hands reaching for tools twice his size. Tom, surprised by the boy's eagerness, found himself delegating manageable tasks, sorting screws, fetching rags, even holding the flashlight, though Leo had a tendency to aim it directly into Tom's eyes. The garden, once Tom's solitary haven, now echoed with Leo's excited chatter as they pulled weeds together, Leo identifying each one with a fantastical name he'd invented. Evenings were quieter. After Leo was tucked into bed, his dreams no doubt filled with talking vegetables and flashlight beams, Sarah and Tom would sit by the fireplace. The flames danced, casting flickering shadows on the walls as they traded stories. Tom, usually taciturn, found himself opening up, recounting tales of his childhood on the farm, his voice a low rumble. Sarah, in turn, spoke of her life before everything. She never mentioned what she was running from, but her stories were filled with art galleries, bustling city streets, and a life that felt a world away from the quiet stillness of Tom's home. He noticed the way her eyes would darken when she paused, the unspoken weight she carried. He didn't push. He sensed she would share when she was ready. He just listened, offering a quiet presence, a silent promise of safety. One sun-drenched afternoon, Tom surprised them both with a picnic. He spread a checkered blanket in the backyard beneath the sprawling branches of the old oak tree. Leo, ecstatic, bounced around like a rubber ball, scattering crumbs of cheese and crackers. Sarah, a genuine smile gracing her lips, helped arrange the sandwiches Tom had meticulously prepared. He'd even managed to bake a batch of cookies, slightly burnt around the edges but filled with genuine effort. As they ate, a blue jay landed on a branch overhead, chirping inquisitively. Leo, mid-bite, pointed a sticky finger. "He wants a cookie." Tom chuckled. "I don't think blue jays eat cookies, Leo." "Maybe this one does," Leo insisted, holding out a half-eaten cookie towards the bird. The blue jay tilted its head, regarding them with bright, curious eyes. It didn't take the cookie, but the moment hung in the air, a shared moment of simple joy. Later, as Leo chased butterflies across the lawn, his laughter echoing through the air, Tom watched Sarah. She was leaning back against the oak, her eyes closed, a peaceful expression on her face. He realized with a jolt that this small, imperfect gathering felt more like a family than anything he had ever known. But a nagging worry tugged at him. This fragile happiness, this nascent family, felt temporary. He knew, deep down, that Sarah's past wouldn't stay hidden forever. The storm was coming. Secrets and whispers. The tang of wood smoke laced Sarah's hair as she stirred the simmering stew, flames glinting in her gaze. "More potatoes, perhaps?" Tom offered, extending the bowl. Liam, balanced on a rough-hewn log, gave an eager nod, his splinted leg resting on piled blankets. "Thank you, Tom. It's wonderful," Sarah murmured, her voice a soft caress. He studied her, a familiar question gnawing at him. Her past remained an enigma. "So, where did you call home, before all this?" he ventured, hoping to dismantle the invisible wall. Her hand froze mid-stir. The spoon tapped against the earthenware pot as she placed it down. Her eyes skipped his, settling on Liam, her fingers gently smoothing errant strands from his forehead. "It's a long story," she offered finally, her voice strained. "A story you'd rather not tell?" Tom prodded softly, aware of her discomfort. He hesitated to intrude, yet the persistent quiet that cloaked any mention of her former life was unsettling. A sigh escaped her, a breath burdened with unspoken narratives. "It's simply better left undisturbed for now." A fleeting smile touched her lips, but her eyes remained shadowed. "Perhaps someday I'll share it all." He nodded slowly, respecting her reticence, but a disquieting premonition tightened its grip. What secrets did she harbor? What ghosts pursued her? Later, after Liam had drifted off to sleep, nestled in Tom's worn sleeping bag, Tom discovered Sarah at the window, lost in the inky expanse. The moon carved elongated, spectral figures across the clearing. He joined her, leaving a respectful distance. "He's sleeping peacefully," he observed gently. Sarah nodded, her focus unwavering. "He's missing his stories." Tom recalled the well-thumbed copy of Treasure Island amongst their meager possessions. "I'll keep an eye out at the town library next trip." She turned towards him then, her eyes alight with appreciation. As she shifted, her fingers grazed the neckline of her worn tunic, exposing a sliver of metal hidden beneath. A pendant, perhaps? He couldn't discern the shape, but her instinctive grip suggested it held profound significance. A wistful sadness flickered in her gaze as she looked down. He suppressed the urge to inquire, choosing patience. He would earn the right to know. Yet as he lay cocooned in his bedroll that night, the wind seemed to whisper secrets amongst the branches, secrets she guarded zealously. He pondered the life she had abandoned, the life that haunted her gaze and infused her silence. Who was this woman he had encountered in the wilderness, truly? And what was she fleeing? The black car. Tom ruffled Leo's hair. "All right, buddy, I'm heading to the market. We're out of everything but ketchup and regret." He winked, hoping to lighten the mood after yesterday's unsettling encounter with the strange man in the woods. "Sarah's going to help you with your reading, okay? Be good for her." Leo, perched on the worn armchair, nodded, his eyes already glued to the open book in his lap. Sarah sat beside him, a gentle hand resting on his shoulder. She offered Tom a small, grateful smile. "We'll be fine, Tom. Thanks for everything." Tom grabbed his keys from the hook by the door, the metallic jingle unusually loud in the quiet cabin. He hesitated, a knot forming in his stomach. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He forced a smile. "Back in an hour." The gravel crunched under the tires of his old pickup as he pulled out of the driveway, glancing in the rearview mirror. He saw Leo pointing at something in the book, Sarah leaning in close, her dark hair cascading over his small head. He breathed a sigh of relief and pressed on the accelerator. Not 5 minutes after Tom's truck disappeared around the bend, a sleek, black sedan glided silently to a stop in front of the cabin. Its tinted windows reflected the surrounding forest like dark, impenetrable mirrors. No sound came from the engine, as if it were electric. Sarah frowned, peering through the window. "That's an odd car to see out here." Leo, ever curious, scrambled off the armchair and joined her at the window. 2 men emerged from the car. They were dressed identically in dark, impeccably tailored suits, crisp white shirts, and polished black shoes. They moved with a coordinated precision that seemed almost unnatural. One was tall and lean, with a sharp, angular face. The other was shorter, stockier, with a heavy brow and a perpetually grim expression. They approached the cabin, their footsteps silent on the overgrown grass. The tall one reached the door first and knocked, 3 sharp, authoritative raps that echoed in the stillness. Sarah's heart pounded. She hadn't been expecting anyone. She clutched Leo's hand tightly. "Stay behind me," she whispered. She took a deep breath and opened the door. The tall man's gaze swept over her, cold and assessing. "Sarah Walker?" he asked, his voice smooth and devoid of emotion. Sarah swallowed hard. "Who's asking?" The man offered a thin, humorless smile. "We need to ask you a few questions. It concerns the well-being of your son." He gestured towards Leo with a gloved hand. Leo instinctively moved closer to Sarah, burying his face in her leg. The stocky man remained silent, his eyes scanning the surroundings, missing nothing. He exuded an aura of quiet menace. "I don't understand," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "What is this about?" "We can discuss it inside," the tall man said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "It's rather delicate." Princess revealed. The men in their charcoal suits hadn't moved. Sarah stood rigid, her face pale under the porch light's glow. A muscle ticked in her jaw. Leo, oblivious to the charged atmosphere, tugged at the sleeve of one of the men. "Did you know Sarah's a real princess?" he piped up, his voice carrying in the evening air. "She lives in a castle. Well, not here, but, a real one with towers and everything." The suited man he addressed stiffened, his already impassive face becoming a mask of carefully controlled surprise. He exchanged a quick glance with his companion. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, a flicker of what looked like resignation crossing her features. "Leo," she said softly, a warning in her tone. "Let's not exaggerate." "But it's true," Leo insisted, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "She showed me pictures. And she knows how to ride horses like a knight." The second man stepped forward, his voice smooth and oily. "Princess Sarah," he began, his gaze fixed on her, "we understand you've been unreachable. His Majesty is deeply concerned. It is time for you to return home." Sarah's shoulders slumped almost imperceptibly. "I can't." "But your duties." The first man interjected. "My duties are here," she retorted, her voice gaining strength. "With Leo. He needs me." The men exchanged another glance. Tom chose that exact moment to round the corner of the house, a bag of groceries clutched in his arms. The scene that greeted him was surreal, Sarah, looking cornered and desperate, facing down 2 men who seemed out of place amidst the overgrown garden and peeling paint of his porch. Leo clung to Sarah's side, his bright eyes darting between the adults. "Everything all right here?" Tom asked, his voice neutral but edged with caution. He shifted the grocery bag to one arm, his senses on high alert. The second man turned to him, a practiced smile spreading across his face. "Just discussing some family matters with the princess." Tom's eyebrows shot up. "Princess?" He looked at Sarah, a question in his eyes. Her face was a mixture of pleading and apprehension. "We were hoping to persuade her to return home with us," the first man continued, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Her family misses her terribly." Tom stepped onto the porch, placing himself between Sarah and the men. He couldn't explain why, but his gut told him something was very wrong. The air crackled with unspoken tension. He looked at Sarah again, seeking an explanation, but she only shook her head slightly, her gaze fixed on the ground. The scent of impending rain hung heavy in the air, mingling with the sweet fragrance of the honeysuckle climbing the porch railing. "Choosing happiness." The scent of wood smoke clung to Sarah's hair as she sat by the crackling fire, the flames painting dancing shadows on her face. Leo, finally asleep, was curled up on a makeshift bed of blankets nearby. Tom refilled her mug with chamomile tea, his movements quiet and efficient. I never wanted any of it, she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. The tiaras, the endless dinners with dignitaries who only saw a title, the constant pressure to marry some suitable prince. She took a shaky sip of tea. It felt like I was suffocating. Like I was playing a role, not living a life. Tom settled beside her, not touching, but close enough to offer silent support. So you ran? I ran, she admitted. And I dragged Leo into it. He doesn't understand any of this. He just misses his mom. The fire popped, sending a shower of sparks swirling into the night. Tom watched them rise. He's lucky to have you, Sarah. She looked up, surprised. But I'm not his mother. No, Tom agreed. But you're caring for him. You're protecting him. And you're teaching him things no royal tutor ever could. He paused, a flicker of a smile playing on his lips. Like how to build a proper fort out of branches and leaves. Sarah laughed, a genuine sound that eased some of the tension in her shoulders. He's a quick learner. Silence fell again, heavier this time. Sarah knew what she had to do. Tom, she began, her voice thick with emotion, I can't stay here. He didn't flinch. I figured. I have a responsibility, she continued, struggling to find the right words. To my family, to my country. They need me. And Leo needs stability. Tom met her gaze, his eyes filled with an understanding that both comforted and saddened her. What about what you need, Sarah? She looked away, towards the sleeping boy. What I need doesn't matter. Not anymore. That's not true, Tom said, his voice firm. It matters more than anything. You deserve to be happy, Sarah. Truly happy. Not just fulfilling some obligation. His words resonated deep within her, a truth she had been trying to ignore. He was right. She deserved happiness. But could she find it within the gilded cage she had tried so desperately to escape? I have to go back, she said, the words a heavy weight on her tongue. But I'll make sure Leo is taken care of. Tom reached out then, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm and steady, a grounding force in the storm raging inside her. Then go. But don't go back to that performance. Choose happiness, Sarah. Whatever that looks like for you. She squeezed his hand, tears blurring her vision. I will, she promised, though she wasn't sure if she was promising him or herself. The first step, she knew, would be the hardest. Saying goodbye. A royal friend. The carriage wheels crunched on the gravel as it pulled to a stop at the edge of the woods. Sarah leaned out, the afternoon sun catching the gold threads woven into her cloak. I'll be back, she promised, her voice barely a whisper against the rustling leaves. I promise I'll visit. Tom nodded, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He wanted to say more, to tell her how much their friendship meant to him, but the words caught in his throat. Leo, however, had no such trouble. He threw his arms around Sarah's neck, burying his face in her silken hair. Don't forget about Buster, he cried, stepping back to pat the dog who was now licking his fingers. With a final wave, Sarah disappeared inside the carriage. The driver snapped the reins and the horses lurched forward, the carriage disappearing down the long, winding road. Tom watched until it was a speck in the distance, then turned back to Leo. The boy's face was already brightening, anticipation replacing the sadness of goodbye. Life in Oakhaven settled back into its familiar rhythm, but it wasn't quite the same. A few weeks later, a team of surveyors arrived, followed by construction crews. A large plot of land near the center of town was cleared, and slowly, a park began to take shape. Then came the library, its stone walls rising steadily, promising warmth and knowledge within. Tom learned from the mayor that the projects were being funded by a private benefactor, a generous gift to the town. He suspected who it was, but he didn't say anything, waiting for Sarah to reveal her hand. It wasn't long before a letter arrived, sealed with the royal crest. I'm coming for a visit, it read, in Sarah's familiar, looping script. I want to see the park and the library. And, of course, my friends. Leo was beside himself with excitement. He spent days cleaning the house, much to Tom's amusement, and practiced his best bow for the princess. Buster, sensing the anticipation in the air, wagged his tail incessantly. The day of Sarah's visit dawned bright and clear. Tom and Leo waited at the edge of town, their eyes glued to the road. Finally, a familiar carriage appeared, its royal blue paint gleaming in the sunlight. As the carriage drew closer, Tom saw Sarah leaning out the window, her face radiant with a genuine smile. She stepped down, her simple traveling dress a stark contrast to the elaborate gowns she'd worn at the castle. Her eyes sparkled as they met Tom's, and she rushed forward, offering him a warm hug. It's so good to see you both, she said, her voice filled with genuine happiness. She knelt down, ruffling Leo's hair. And you too, Buster? The park was their first stop. Sarah walked through it, admiring the flower beds bursting with color, the winding paths, and the sturdy benches placed beneath the shade of the oak trees. She laughed as Leo chased Buster across the grass, his joyful shouts echoing through the air. The library was even more impressive. The scent of new books filled the air, and sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the rows upon rows of shelves. Sarah ran her fingers along the spines, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "It's perfect," she exclaimed. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town, Sarah turned to Tom, her expression serious. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft. "For everything." Tom squeezed her hand. "We're just glad to have you here, Sarah." And as he looked at her, standing there in the heart of Oakhaven, he knew that their friendship, forged in the depths of the forest, was a bond that nothing could break.